all, and welcome to week 2 in English 102 at Columbia College. I hope you had a good week. I hope I got back to those of you who needed me in a timely fashion. I think I did, but if I messed up, by all means, let me know. So, this week we're going to take a look at the modules you'll see. So, again, I'm clicking on modules. There's week 1, here week 2. It'll be opened once I post this video. So your week 2 tasks and assignments, you're going to watch this lecture video, then you're going to read these short stories and poems along with these 2 chapters. You're also going to draft and post your close reading essay for peer review. So you're going to treat it like a discussion post, which means you need to respond to at least 2 classmates. And I'll be giving you a little more feedback as far as that goes. So your initial post, just by posting your draft, you're going to get 60 points. And then feedback to other classmates will garner you the other up to 40 points. So that's how we'll be grading the draft. You'll also have an initial discussion post with responses due. So that's on top of drafting and posting your close reading. And then you'll need to post your reading annotations as well so that I can give you your daily grade kind of classwork credit for that, because I like to see what you guys are thinking. So what does that look like? Well, this week we're going to be focusing mainly on close reading and what that is. So I kind of gave you a hint of that last week when I looked at the opening of the lottery for you. I hope that you guys enjoyed that story as much as I enjoyed teaching it. I'm telling you, it's hard for me not to point out to you all of the nooks and crannies out of the very get-go. But I want to point out, too, that this is a great story to take a look at, and it really points out to why we need a second or a third read. And that's what close reading is. Most of us can walk away with reading something one time, and we get the gist of it. We can summarize it. But really noticing it for its artistry and its crafting, that's what's really important with a close read. So what's great about this story, and I hinted at this last week when I talked about stones, and I had the question over there to the side about, we know we have the character whose last name is Delacroix, which means of the cross, and then we talked about the stones, and I asked you to ponder this idea of stones and what of the cross could mean, and I hinted at, it being about Jesus. And then if you get to the very end of the story, which is really the really good part, we get to see this concept that they are actually stoning a citizen. They sacrifice one citizen every year by luck of the draw of the black dot to, and as far as the story can tell, the best you will ever get at knowing why they do this is that it is a community tradition, and that it supposedly means that they're going to have a good crop. So the story was written in the 50s, coming out of World War II. We see a lot of these hints of, I told you about the women and men's roles, but then we see towards the end how Tessie is acting, how she's upset that she was actually chosen. She tries to throw her own children under the bus, but then it turns out that even her own child, the littlest one, the toddler, who can barely hold the stone, they give him a tiny one, he's the one who actually stones her. And we can assume that it's stoned to death based on some of the descriptions of some of the stones that people were carrying, particularly her friends. We see here that Dunbar had small stones, but then others had larger stones, so large she had to pick it up with both hands. So all these different types of stones. So when we look at this, we could say that without researching what Shirley Jackson intended for the story, we have grounds to say that this is a parallel to the stoning of Jesus Christ. We have grounds to say that this is talking about how those closest to you will end up hurting you. There are all kinds of thematic ideas that we could say about the story. And Shirley Jackson crafts it in such a way that when we go back, we find all of these other little hints and Easter eggs for those of you who like to see those in TV shows and movies and games and stuff like that. So, going back to the beginning, so I talk about the stones from the beginning to the end. We also look at the importance of names. So, we have Bobby Martin. So, when we talk about um, a martin, that is a person or a bird that's like a calling bird. So this person is heading out the cause and announcing it, perhaps. You can look at Harry Jones as just keeping up with the Joneses. This is everybody. All of these villagers are meaningful in some capacity. We go on, we talk about Mr. Summers and Mr. Graves. Well, who ushers in the box? Let's take a look at that. Mr. Summers, keep in mind what time of year it is, it's the summer. So, Mr. Summers conducts the lottery every year. The summer leads in the lottery. So, anytime we see Summers, we've got that tie-in about this idea that it's supposed to be something bright and good and everybody looks forward to it and it's warmth and it's sunshine. But no, it brings about death. Oddly, too, he's very jovial, meaning he's very happy. But look at this. He runs a coal business. And what color's coal, people? Coal is black. And let's highlight that for just a second. So we have black coal. We also have when he, meaning Mr. Summers, arrived in the square carrying the black wooden box. There's black again. There was a murmur of conversation. He waved, calls a little bit later. Mr. Graves, where might Tessie end up? In the grave. The postmaster, he's the messenger. He delivers the messages. He's carrying a 3-legged stool, and the stool was put in the center of the square, and Mr. Summers set the black box down. Now, if you remember what I told you last week, if it shows up once, might just be incidental. If it shows up twice, it's probably important. Third time it shows up, you may still not know what it symbolizes, but you know it symbolizes something. So, we now have this concept of black repeated 3 times, and we are not finished with this paragraph. So we have coal. Where do we find coal? In the ground. We need coal to survive. Or we need a heat source to survive. I'll back up on that one. Black. We have a black wooden box. What else is a wooden box that Mr. Graves might be carrying? Anybody thinking about a casket? That Mr. Graves sets the black box down on the stool. And at the point of this, we notice that the villagers keep their distance. Wonder why? Do we all want to avoid death? Do a lot of us feel that way? If you saw the Grim Reaper going down the street, how many of you are going to walk right up to him and shake his hand? I doubt very many. We even see the men hesitating just to help with the box. So, notice now we've got box again. So, not only is this the 3rd time, I'm going with a different color here because I want to show you this. This box has now been brought up 3 times. That box is super important. I wonder why. Because everything in the box is going to be about death. Notice again, we now have the black box once more. And once you start seeing it, the simple repetition of the word black, 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 black keeps telling our subconscious something's not right here. And we find out that ultimately it is the blackest of the black and it is death. And we see that going through. They want a new box. Nobody's going to do anything about the box. But it was represented by the tradition right here. That's what I was saying. Tradition was represented by the black box. None of us can escape death. And how do they do it here? Oh, look. We got box again, and we've got box again. They talk about a new box again, but it fades away. But now we've got the black box again. So just in this one section, you have been psychologically primed by the author to see black and box, and it's going to become darker to you. We keep going through, we see all of these names again: Summers, Graves, Summers, Graves, Summers, Graves. Continuous repetition of that. So all of this is the way that the author has shaped this story. She could have chosen anything else. What if she'd have made it a marble box? How would that have changed your reaction to it? At least if we put somebody in a marble mausoleum, we think highly of them. But a black wooden box, that suggests poverty. That suggests just fate. There's nothing to be celebrated in that regard. So we see how her word choice can manipulate our thoughts. And that's the same case in all of the other stories. And I'm going to show you one other one. I'm going to work on poetry with you too. But I do have this word perfunctory underlined. And it says that the official, who is Mr. Summers, he performed it perfunctorily, which means like just rote memorization. There's no engagement or excitement about it. It was just routine. It's what they had to do. A tuneless chant is what they call it. So this is so mundane to them. Where do we live in a society where death is so mundane that it's just a perfunctory duty, something that has to be done? But they do this. And as they move on, we see that what happens is these little slips of paper, they have a black dot. There's one black dot in all of them. Well, some of you might have heard the expression about being blackballed. So people would go around and they would have two marbles, one white and one black. And if you were accepted into the organization, you would put it, if the people accepted you into the organization, they would put a white marble in. But if somebody did not want you in that organization, they would put a black ball in. That's where the expression blackballed came from, being blackballed. So here, when you are black dotted, you are pinned for death. If your family draws the dot, that means somebody in that family is going to die for the sacrifices of the community. And then within the family, whoever draws the dot, regardless of their position. Now, remember that even as little as the child, he had to draw. Now listen, there have been plenty of times I've been mad at my kids. I might even said something about stoning them, but I'm not. So the idea that she would rather do that, stone her own child, that is deep. But the author is using all of this to point out to us the harsh realities of life and death, the dangers of tradition, doing something just because we've been told to, not because there's any actual reason for it. So, for example, I don't know if you guys have figured this out by now. I'm a little bit older. I'm 52. I was born and raised in the South, and I was told that you are not supposed to wear white pants or white shoes before Easter. Y'all, I'm not even going to lie. It was so warm last week, I went to put on my white pants, and I wore my white pants. But the thought went through my head that I could hear my grandmother saying, you don't wear white before Easter. And I thought, why is that even a tradition? Now, if you tell me that white pants distract deer and it's going to draw them to my car, if that's a scientifically proven fact, then by grannies, I will not wear white pants in the spring because I don't want to get hit by another deer. However, it just being because some arbitrary group made it up and decided that was the way things should be, no. And I'm not saying you shouldn't follow authority. I normally go the speed limit. I don't rob grocery stores. I'm trying to think. I'm really not a bad person. I've definitely never killed someone. Right? So I try to follow the law, but that doesn't mean that I don't question why some things might need to be done or not done. I recognize if I threaten to kill my husband and actually follow through with it, regardless of whether or not I might claim menopause as the reason, I'm probably going to go to jail. And while I look good in orange and I could use the peace and quiet, I don't want to live out my life that way. So I'm old enough and smart enough to make better decisions. But these people are so caught up in a mob mentality. Oh, look around us. Go read Facebook. Go look at the news. Mob mentality. Nobody really knows what they stand for because they're just waiting for the next person to yell something at them so that they can tag along. So Shirley Jackson is really talking to her readers about thinking things through. She is forcing us to look at the ugly, to figure out for ourselves what we are willing to do and not do, and what happens when we are ignorant about it, or when we choose to look the other way, or when we choose to participate. Because while some of these people were hesitant, it doesn't tell us that any of them really spoke out. We have something where Old Man Warner, because he's warning them, there's another name for you. Old Man Warner says, yeah, some young folks were talking about changing it, but they don't know nothing. Oh, how many times have we heard that? Just because they're young doesn't mean their ideas are bad. Just because they're old doesn't mean their ideas are bad. But we have to start learning to think for ourselves. And that was one of the great things about Shirley Jackson's writing. She wanted us to really learn to think for ourselves. So interestingly enough, the other one that I have for you here is My Papa's Waltz. Now this one is actually in your reading for this week. But I decided that I would go ahead and do a little overview with you like I did with the lottery. So you kind of get a feel for what a close reading really looks like and what you should be paying attention to. So for the sake of this, since we did short story last week, I'm looking at poetry this week. And we're going to compare and contrast some things as we go through. But the close reading is really a multiple reading of a situation or story or a paragraph or a poem or anything else. Think about, like I said last week, think about how many times you watch a movie over and over again that you've seen and you always learn something new, or you find that you really like something or you really don't like something. So rereading is the same thing as rewatching. It just gives your brain more time to think. So now this is an activity that I use with my high school students, but it applies here and it breaks it down, which I think is really, really good for you guys. Some of the things that might be unfamiliar for my students, my high school students, which may be unfamiliar to you, are these words. So always try to do a preview. For you, when you're going through the passage, it may just be that you are highlighting words you don't know, or you're having to go and look at them. And what I love about digital resources usually is that we can usually do a 2-finger click and it might tell me that I can go look up the word. Yep, define waltz. So I've highlighted, it says a dance in triple time performed by a couple who as a pair turn rhythmically around and around as they progress around the dance floor. So if you're reading the digital resource, you might have that ability. So we know that a waltz is a type of quick step dance. I would do the same thing for, well, if my computer will let me scroll. I can define romp. And it says play roughly and energetically. So I have a good feeling for that. And then countenance. I can do the same thing for that. All I'm doing is highlighting the word and hitting 2 fingers on my MacBook. So it might be a right click if you're working with a regular mouse. But we're going to define countenance. And it tells me a person's face or a facial expression. So I've got my little overview here, and I've got the title, and we always ask ourselves, well, what does the title mean? So we've got My Papa's Waltz, and again, I'm not giving you any background on the writer yet. I'll do that later. But so my means it's personal, means we have a first-person narrator, speaker, Papa, so it's either a dad or a granddad, and then a waltz. So this is my father/grandfather's dance. What kind of feelings do you get from that? Because if I'm thinking of a waltz and I watch Dancing with the Stars and I know it's very elegant and graceful, but then I have this word romp, which is kind of silly and playful. So I might have to read a little bit more. But so far I'm thinking something more aligned than the ideas of a smooth moves. So first a reading. So I've told you tell who the speaker is and then cite evidence. We've already done that. I know by the title that it's first person. And it's either the child or the grandchild. Notice I didn't say he or she. So, and then in one or two sentences, we're going to summarize the events that took place. So I'm just going to read it to you because I love this poem. I'm going to shrink it just a little bit so I can have it all on one page. There we go. All right. My Papa's Waltz. But actually, you know what? I'm going to read and try to mark as I go. Nope. I'm just going to read it the first time. The whiskey on your breath could make a small boy dizzy, but I hung on like death. Such waltzing was not easy. We romped until the pans slid from the kitchen shelf. My mother's countenance could not unfrown itself. The hand that held my wrist was battered on one knuckle. At every step you missed my right ear scraped a buckle. You beat time on my head with a palm caked hard by dirt, then waltzed me off to bed still clinging to your shirt. Okay, so I got a mom, probably then the dad, and it's a child, or it's an adult remembering back on childhood because we see past tense. I hung on, we romped, it was battered, waltzed me off. So all of these are past tense. Now, what do we need to do on a second read? Well, I've given you some ideas here. So the first thing I want to do is go highlight anything positive in green. So I'm going to get my little green. Okay, I got waltzing. I think that's a pretty green word we've talked about. Okay, so I'm looking again. And I only have 2 words. Okay, I'll give you 3. Romped. That's another good one. If you get more, let me know. So, let's then highlight some not so good ones in red. Okay? Whiskey on your breath. Maybe not. Dizzy. That's not a very good feeling. Hung on like death. Not a good feeling. Not easy. Not a good feeling. Oh, did y'all see did y'all notice my romp went back to green? Went back to red. Let me make that green again. Okay. Pan slid from the kitchen shelves. Could not unfrown itself. That's kind of dark. So just holding my wrist, that's not bad. We'll go with green on that one. Battered on one knuckle. That's not very good. So we're going to go with red on that one. So missing steps. Right ear scraped a buckle. You beat time on my head. With a palm caked hard by dirt. Then waltzed me off to bed, still clinging to your shirt. So, we have some significant phrases here. But we also have to keep in mind that we have a first-person narrator who is telling us something about past events. And interestingly enough, when we have a first-person narrator, we have an unreliable narrator. How do we know that this child, now adult, is telling us the truth about what happened? How can we decide if the father is good or bad? How do we decide how the child, now an adult, feels about that? Now, my daddy liked to have a good drink. And he was a funny man. He was not a bad drunk. So, the first time I ever read The Whiskey on Your Breath, I thought, I didn't dislike that smell as a child. And my dad would dance me around the house. He loved to shag. But I would never say I hung on like death. My dad and I could romp around the house, but I don't ever remember my mom's face unable to unfrown itself. So why is Mom not happy that Dad and son are doing this? Is she just mad because the pan slid off and she's got something else to clean? Or is she mad about something else going on? Then we get to the next stanza, and we look at that, and the hand that held my wrist. So again, holding a wrist is not necessarily a bad thing. Was battered on one knuckle. Was it just because the dad was a hard worker? Or had he hit something recently? Now, a drunk can easily miss a few steps. And if the child is waist level, that child's ear, in waltzing with the father, could get scraped on a buckle. And I can think of plenty of times looking at stanza 4 that I've tapped a rhythm out on one of my children. And that palm could be caked hard by dirt because it's been working. And then the father could take the child to the bed and put the child down for sleep, even though the child may not want to go, which is why they might be still clinging to their father's shirt. But what if, just what if, our now speaker is referring to instances of abuse as a waltz, as being perfunctory, as being routine. And he beat him so much and so often, it was a dance they knew by heart. Why might the boy have gotten dizzy? Could it have been because he was being hit in the head? Maybe with that buckle? Could that be why mother is frowning? Or could she just be frowning because dad's drunk again? Maybe they got some bills to pay and she's mad he went out and drank whiskey. And maybe the boy is just happy to see his dad. But looking at things like this simile and this imagery, I mean, y'all, whiskey on your breath is a strong image. Unfrowning. It could not unfrown itself. Like no amount, I'm sitting here making a face, y'all can't even see me. No amount of cajoling was going to get that face to change. So again, is it battered knuckle because the father's working hard? Or is it a battered knuckle because he's already hit his child and busted his own knuckle open? So if you want to know more, you can read about Rothke. This is truly one of my favorite poems because of the dichotomy, this two-sided factor. That's dichotomy. This what does it represent? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? And ultimately, what's going to come from this or come to us from this is a little bit of what we bring to the table. So in my mind, this child, regardless of the state of the father, if the child held animosity towards his father, anger, animosity towards his father, I don't think he would have used ambiguous language unless he was trying to be facetious. But we also know that children can misread things. And if a child thinks that a beating is normal, who's to tell them otherwise? Because that's what experience has taught them. So, when we look at the positive and negative connotations, we're left with a feeling. And after our first read, while we might walk away a little bit more positive, upon that closer inspection, that closer reading, we see that it's a little bit darker. And when we look at the similes and metaphors and any literary devices that are used here, then we see the more negative here. We see we smell the whiskey on the breath. We see the pans falling off. We can hear them too. I mean, it doesn't say it there, but imagine the sound of pans sliding from the kitchen shelf onto the ground. Beating time. We can see that palm caked in dirt. We can see the child still clinging to the shirt. I didn't mean to rhyme, but how cool was that, huh? Well, the poet did. I didn't mean to do it, but anyway, it is what it is. So when we look at it again, what does this title really mean? How can you make an interpretation of that? And that's all of the evidence that we can gather from that. Now, if you go and do more research and you look up Rothke, you might find that he had a tumultuous relationship with his father. And that might tell you a little bit more. But I stand by my idea that if the father was that bad, the child would have just said it. And if you don't agree with me, oh, Lord, child, go read some of Sylvia Plath's poems about her mama. Talk about tumultuous. And then look at what Sylvia Plath's daughter wrote about her. Woo, even more tumultuous. So whether it's Shirley Jackson in a short story or Rothke in this poem, these writers, these authors, poets, they speak to us. They're trying to tell us a story. And a lot of times, that story is not as black and white as we think that it is. So that's why we have to use the close reading. So when you look at, and I've got this linked for you, when you look at your close reading, now if you're doing a poem, you're going to do the whole poem, obviously, particularly if it's not a big poem, but at least certain sections, and most of our stories are short, so you're going to be doing a close reading and analysis of a short story. So I've left you this link because I thought it did a really good idea for explaining to you the steps. So you're going to read your passage. I'm going to talk to you about picking that out in just a minute. And obviously take notes. Annotate, 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 annotate. Even if it doesn't seem relevant at the time, or you come back to it later on and you go, no, that wasn't really relevant, that's okay. You're still locked into the story. Then you have to analyze that passage. You're going to look at things like word choice, that narrative voice that I talked about. Who's telling the story? Is it an unreliable narrator? Or is it a third person who's more objective? What is the tone? How does the speaker sound? And then what rhetorical or literary devices does that writer use to get that message across to you? What are they really saying underneath it all? And how do they mold, shape, bend, warp, whatever it may be, the meaning of a word to make you think the way that you do? You're then going to develop your thesis statement based on that. So if I were thinking back to Rothke, I might say Theodore Rothke's work with My Papa's Waltz shows the nostalgic memory of a child dancing with a father he loved. If that's my thesis, then that's what I've got to prove based on everything else that I pull out of that story, out of that poem. And I need at least 3 solid pieces of evidence to make that a solid argument. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to build your argument. And I would suggest that you consider an outline where you develop that thesis based on those points, and then what evidence are you going to do that? Now, a lot of people don't teach outlining, and I'm not mandating an outline for this. I do, however, think that it's a pretty good idea for you to get a feel for what might be going on, so you can help shape it. And it'll change. These are malleable. Thesis statements change all the time based on the evidence. And we might decide on one thing, and that evidence is just not fitting, and we have to change it up. So that might be what we have to do with that. So, how are you going to do that then? Well, let's go back to the module. So, I'm going to the draft of close reading for peer review. You are going to select a passage from the textbook and conduct a close reading of that passage. You're going to focus on all those things I was telling you, the language, the form, the tone, the meaning, symbols, structure, imagery, all of those nice little things. And then you're going to write a 3 to 5 page essay where you are analyzing the point that you're trying to make from this close reading. You're going to follow MLA formatting. Now, two things that I have to show you here. First, I want to go back to select a passage from the textbook. And if you will follow me through, I'm trying to find my materials. And maybe. Now, one really cool feature about this textbook is that it has a search by theme. So when you are picking by theme, well, the reason that we want to pick by theme is because it makes it more relevant to us. And the more we can relate to something, the more likely we are to pay attention to it and connect to it. Now, the first time my Papa's Waltz was ever put in front of me, I didn't pick that up and go, oh, my daddy and I used to dance all the time. I can't wait to read this poem. Heck no, it was shoved in my face. Now, where did my textbook go, y'all? Okay, there we go. So, no, that doesn't always happen. Of course this happens. Here we go. Okay, so let's go over here and let's see. It is in, or it is after, I'm using my paper copy. It's after part 4, drama. Okay, maybe not. Let's see about this book. Oh, no, there we go. Select by forms and themes. That's what we want. Selections by forms and themes. All right, so you'll find that. I went to about this book, selections by forms and themes. So you can look here, and then you can find things that might interest you. So when you actually go, so this is not part of your regular reading. This is another part of your reading for what you're going to do for your essay. You're going to pick your story. But I would suggest that you look at what is here in this section. Where is it going? Why is it doing this? Let's see. Where'd it go? All right, let me go back. It's not showing me the whole page. Okay. So, I can tell you that most of these are poetry. But anyway, so some of them will be short stories, but they are arranged by topic. So we have the African American experience. So you might want to scroll through these titles. Does something strike your fancy? How do you remember it? Some of my favorites are listed in here. I love We Real Cool. I love We Wear the Mask. Another one of my favorites is Those Winter Sundays. I often pair that with My Papa's Waltz. Theme for English B, Harlem. All of these are great ones. I'm trying to see if there's, America. Claude McKay is another great artist coming out of the Harlem Renaissance. Ballad of Birmingham. Everyday Use is a fabulous short story. There are 2 even here on aging. Alcoholism, we saw My Papa's Waltz, obviously. Allusions to mythology, so if any of those are your things, I love Prometheus. It's a great one. Things about America. Notice we saw America up there with Claude McKay. They've got it listed here too. Animals. The Lamb and the Tiger are 2 great ones. Sorry, having a moment. The Asian American Experience. How I Got That Name is quite interesting. 1,000 Years of Good Prayers is another really good one. I'm not big on athletics, and I've never read that one. I'm sorry. I did mention both of the ballads. Lines Composed a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey is a beautifully written poem by Wordsworth. Death and Elegy. So an elegy is like like think of elegies at a funeral where somebody stands there, like a eulogy, but it's maybe good words. One of my favorites here is Death Be Not Proud. Um, and Emily Dickinson's Because I Could Not Stop for Death. We actually do have a rose for Emily on the readings this week, so let me know what you think about that one. Annabelle Lee's another one, great one. Richard Corey, super short, highly impactful. Teaches such a lesson in such a short amount of time. Let's see. The Wife's Lament is a good one. We're also reading The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock this week. Interestingly enough, and I wrote short stories and argumentative pieces and poetry my whole life. Since I could learn how to write, I was writing. And I never did well in elementary school with poetry because I would see something different than the teachers told me I was supposed to see. Well, I later on learned how to argue. So, while I can see multiple sides to a poem, for example, like I can with my Papa's Waltz, I have my own thoughts, and that's okay because I can prove it. So, again, as I said last week, unless you're talking about pink elephants, I'll listen to what you have to say. Now, interestingly enough, though, I was 16 years old, sitting in English 3. Had to read the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. And it was the first poem that I ever read that I went, oh, I get it. Like I can remember sitting in that classroom and absolutely knowing, oh, I got this poem. And for the first time in my life, I was right. So let me know what you think about that one. My Last Duchess, quite entertaining. Got a little plot twist. Theme for English B, I've already mentioned. You see My Last Duchess again. Photograph from September 11th. Obviously, that one is very new. Well, I can't say very new. It's 25 years old. Y'all, good Lord, I need to just whatever. Anyway, epigrams are very short. Epistolaries are letters. So these are letter poems. Erasure poetry. I mean, think about what that might mean. But they just go on and on and on and on and on. I already told you about how I got that name. Very good one. Oedipus we'll be talking about soon. If feminism is your thing, I highly suggest Story of an Hour. Very, very good. The Yellow Wallpaper, also very good. God, Faith, Prayer, and Religious Doubt. I already talked to you about The Lamb and the Tiger. Both very short, both very good. Young Goodman Brown is awesome. All the Time I Pray to Buddha is good. And On Being Brought from Africa to America is also good. If you're into Gothic literature, The Cask of Amontillado is always a win, but it's Edgar Allan Poe, and when is he not? Dulce et Decorum Est is also very, very good. Very short, too. If history is your thing, you've got lots of those. If horror is your thing, well, we've already got one down, The Lottery. So maybe that might be something else. Humor and satire, I love Jabberwocky. Those are all good, though. Illness, the metamorphosis is very powerful. About a little over 100 years old now at this point, but still highly relevant to the pressure and weight that we put on people around us. Immigration and Exile, again, how I got that name, I've talked about. 1,000 Years of Good Prayers, I've talked about. Intertextuality, so that has to do with like alluding to other texts. So, like for example, Eve's apology in defense of women, that takes Eve's perspective and apologizing to modern day woman. There's a poem called "The Shepherd's Call to the Nymph," and then this is the nymph's reply to the shepherd. Quite interesting because the shepherd is really a horn dog who's just after this woman, God bless her, and then this one is a rebuttal, and it's quite interesting. I think you need to read both of them, but anyway. My Name is Espada is another one, a good one. Ars Poetica, El Salvador, all of those are good. LBGTQIA plus experience. I Invite My Parents to a Dinner Party is quite entertaining. And the reason I like this one is because when we think about the concept of a dinner party, it's actually symbolic in a lot of literature. So, and it has roots in religion, believe it or not. But again, it's that concept of communion. Who do we choose to have at our table? And who do we choose to exclude from our table? And why? So the presence of a table with or without people is significant and symbolic. And I think that that's really, really important. Love, desire, and relationships, obviously, big, huge section here. Gee, I wonder why. Because everybody writes about it. Um, and everybody has felt it in some way or another. Hemingway's Hills Like White Elephants, a little bit different than the movie, just saying. Um, there was another one I saw that I wanted. Oh, well, we already talked about a valediction, forbidding mourning. Um, Annabelle Lee, we've already talked about. Shakespeare's sonnets. Um, Interestingly enough, if you read Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day, be prepared to be shocked because it is funny. Magical realism, minimalism, money, moon, stars, planets, music, the Native American experience, Indian boarding school, fabulous. Um, Nature and landscape, um, The Road Not Taken, Ode to a Nightingale, um, 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. All of those are really good. Um, Poetry of Place. So these are poems about specific locations or things like that in the poet's memory. Like I said, Lines Composed a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey is fabulous. But we even have one here from South Carolina. Race or Racism, Trouble in Mind, Identity Card, America, I've already talked about, in Ballad of Birmingham. History Lesson, another good one. Sin and Temptation, Young Goodman Brown. I'll learn how to speak in a minute. Sonnets are particular types of poems, and I've already mentioned Shakespeare. But How Do I Love Thee by Browning. Those Winter Sundays I mentioned. Emmett Till's Name Still Catches in My Throat. That is a fabulous one. Whoso Lives to Hunt is another good one. Southern Life, we're reading A Rose for Emily today or this week. Let me know what you think. I also love Flannery Connor as a Southern writer. A Good Man is Hard to Find is so good. Let's see. Cummings is always fabulous. Villanelles. So that means, little short snippets. Dylan Thomas's Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night, I've already said. Violence, I already spoke about. Espada, and The Lottery. The Things They Carried, Tim O'Brien, Vietnam War story. Fabulous Chef's Kiss. Just puts you right there. As does What Every Soldier Should Know. War. We Lived Happily During the War. Is a very powerful read. Told you about The Things They Carried. Dulce et Decorum Est. That was a good one. And Work. We talked about Metamorphosis already. What Teachers Make. I myself like that one, but that's just me. The Writing Process. What we're actually practicing on now. And then Youth. So you have tons of topics to choose from. So if you scroll through these and you get some titles that you like, by all means, read them, whether they be a short story or a poem. But this will give you some ownership. Pick something that interests you. Read a few of them. Read a few of them just one time. Tell yourself, I'm going to read 3 poems. And then pick one that really speaks to you. But go for your interest, because if you go for your interest, you'll find something that you really, really, really love to do. So, the last thing on our to-do list is for me to show you how to write these things. And this is the easy part. You can't go wrong here. You're going to click on your little waffle pattern on your Google page. You're going to go to Google Docs. You're going to pray that this little strip picks up here. If it doesn't, you're going to go to the template gallery and you're going to look for report MLA. and you're going to click on it. Now, what the report MLA does is give you a template. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, a template. And that template allows you to simply type over whatever you need to type. So you're going to put your name. You're going to put my name for the professor's name. You're going to put the course title. You're going to put the date. And then you're going to put the title of it. And let's say, this is mine. Y'all can't use my Papa's Waltz. Ooh, aren't I engaging? Dance or destruction. And then I'm going to delete all of this Latin here because I don't need it. Delete it all. Delete it all. I'm going to leave the works cited for just a minute because I'm going to show you something there. But so I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to start typing my essay. And I'm just going to keep on typing. And look how it wraps the text, and it wraps the text. And then I'm going to keep on typing and keep on typing. And when I get to the end of my sentence, and I put a period, and then I hit enter, it will automatically tab over. It's the default setting. So I have an indented paragraph. Notice how it's double spaced everything. I don't have to do anything to it. Now, what I do need to do is come down here. Notice I've clicked in front of the works cited. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to go to insert, break, and I'm going to do a page break. And look, it took it down to the next page. So this is where I would come in and cite the story out of the textbook. And if you're not familiar with how to do that, by all means Google, but it's also in your workbook, in your textbook. But real quick source, if you have this little feature, you can go to EasyBib, you can go to Citation Machine, any of those types of things, and you can look up how to cite a short story in an anthology, MLA, because that's what we're doing. And look, we get all of these. You want the 9th edition, just FYI. And it gives us a little AI overview here. It says author's last name and author's first name. So I would say Rothke, Theodore, My Papa's Waltz, Anthology, Literature, a portable anthology, edited by Gardner, Diaz, Long, Riddle, blah, 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 blah. And I would give all that information. And then I would give the year it was published in the pages. And there we go. Notice how they do the in-text citation. So don't freak out because Google does most of it for you. Saves a lot of stress. You shouldn't have to mess with too much. It's got your form right here. And then I will be happy. And anytime little blue lines or red lines show up, that means there's something wrong. And you guys are level 102. So that means I should not find contractions. And that means that it should not be in first person. But I'm going to make sure that's in your instructions too. So if any of you guys have any questions about any of your tasks or assignments this week, by all means, reach out to me. Oh, I forgot. Microsoft Word, if you're using Microsoft Word, it does the same thing. Let me show you that real quick. Let's go to Word. Let's go to File, New Document. And if I want to open up a template, I don't use this one all the time, can you tell? Let's do a search for template. Where's my template? Let's see. Is it here? There should be one of these that says template. All right, this is going to bug me. All right, you know what we do? We go to Google. Hello. Find an MLA template in Word. All right, what did it tell me to do? Open Word, click New. So I open Word. Click New. New from template. Y'all, shoot me now. New from template. All right, here we go. So I want MLA. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do MLA search. And look what I got. MLA style 9th edition. And I pop on that and guess what it does? Pops up the exact same thing that Google just had. So all I have to do is type over it. Ignore the bird. We don't need that. But it's got everything, including your last name and page number over here. So this is just pretty too. So either of those are features that you can use to cite your sources. If you have any questions or comments for me, please reach out to me this week. You guys have a great day.